Well, the top story this evening, all independent directors on the board of Indian Hotels have unanimously backed steps taken by Cyrus Mistry and have expressed full confidence in his chairmanship. And these independent directors are some of the biggest names in corporate India. Deepak Parekh, the chairman of HDFC, is on the board of Indian Hotels. K.K. Dadi Seth, the former managing director of Hindustan Unilever, is another independent director. Nadir Godrej, renowned industrialist and younger brother of Adi Godrej, also an independent director, backing Cyrus Mistry. Irina Vittal, who was formerly a top executive at McKinsey, has also thrown her weight behind Cyrus Mistry. Vibha Paul Rishi, former executive at the Max Group and Future Group, is another director to support Cyrus Mistry. And Blackstone executive Gautam Banerjee, who's also a board member at Singapore Airlines, has also backed Cyrus Mistry. So this is an embarrassment for the Tatas because, remember, Indian Hotels is the first company to have held its board meeting after the ouster of Cyrus Mistry as chairman of Tata Sons, and the independent directors meeting ahead of the scheduled board meeting at 2 p.m. and unanimously backing Cyrus Mistry. Our army of reporters join us now to take us through this big story. Kritika Saxena, Ronojoy Banerjee, and of course senior journalist Arun Giri are with us. Appreciate you joining us here on the show. Kritika, let me come to you first now, because the larger question is, given what has transpired at the board of Indian Hotels today, how are the Tatas likely to respond to this move?
Well, Shireen, the first step that Tata Sons can do at this point in time, and this is something that they are mulling currently, which we have been able to confirm from sources within the Tata Group, is that they are in the process of convening a EGM. Now, essentially, as the principal shareholder and as a promoter with 30% stake, they will, Ratan Tata and Tata Sons will be chairing that EGM, and depending upon the outcome of that EGM, Tata Sons will take the next course of action. Now, remember, there are 2 points here. One is Cyrus Mistry's role as the director on Indian Hotels board, and the second is his role as the chairman of the board. Now, if at all the director position is going to be taken up at the EGM, if at all the shareholders decide to vote in favor of Cyrus Mistry staying, there's a big question mark on what the Tata Group will do, and perhaps Arun will go into the detail on what the steps are in that case. But if the shareholders vote in favor of Cyrus Mistry being ousted as the director on the board of directors of Indian Hotels, then there will be a separate board meeting called, Shireen, and we have been able to confirm that post that, since he's been removed as the director, the board will separately take this up and thereby take a call on his role as the chairman on the board.
Okay, so let me go across then to Arun, because Arun, you brought us the first comment that's come in from the Tata side after the independent directors of Indian Hotels have unanimously decided to back Cyrus Mistry. Mohan Parasaran, who's the legal advisor to the Tatas, has come out and made a statement. Take us through that, and what does that tell you about what the road ahead could possibly look like now as far as Cyrus Mistry's future on the boards of these companies is concerned?
It's an all-out war now, Shireen. I think, as one director told me, it's a fight to the finish. We spoke to Mr. Mohan Parasaran, the former Solicitor General of India, and who's advising Tata Sons on this issue. And he told us, and I'm quoting him, the support of independent directors in respect of some of the group companies are part of a well-crafted strategy for a long-term battle. And the speed at which this decision was conveyed to the regulatory authorities raises a lot of eyebrows and throws up several questions regarding the bona fide of several persons. This is what Mr. Parasaran told me a while ago when I spoke to him. I think they are bracing themselves up now for a legal battle. They thought that probably maintaining a low pitch over the last 10-15 days, they might be able to see off Mr. Mistry from some of these boards, might probably, convince him or that might persuade him to resign from some of these boards. That clearly hasn't happened. In fact, they view this as an escalation in the battle over the last 10 days. And in fact, they are saying, when I spoke to Tata Sons sources, they say there is no change in strategy. This in fact vindicates their stand to remove him in the first place. And all indications are that in the next 48, 72 hours, you are going to see action being taken the wheels being set in motion for removal of Mr. Mistry from the directorship of several of these group companies. The sources at Tata Sons say they are now left with no option whatsoever but to initiate these proceedings. They would not have wanted to get into this. They wanted him to resign on his own, just like Mr. Tata offered Mr. Mistry to resign as the chairman of Tata Sons before the board meeting began on October 24th. So that is not happening. We are going to see some fireworks early next week, Shireen, for sure. And one more point on the Indian independent directors' action. Yes. While no official statement has come from Tata Sons, sources are saying their side is that the independent directors do not know as to why we have removed the chairman of Tata Sons. We have cogent reasons, and probably they should have checked with us. The point being driven home is that the principal shareholder of Indian Hotels has lost confidence in Mr. Cyrus Mistry, and they believe that should have been taken into account by the independent directors. All said and done, next 72 hours, expect some big ticket action from Tata Sons.
Okay, so expect fireworks is what Arun is telling us. But Ron, since we are speaking of independent directors and we've been working the phones, we've now seen the independent directors of Indian Hotels go on record in support of Cyrus Mistry. But privately, independent directors on companies like Tata Motors, even Tata Steel, were saying that they were disconnected with the decision that had been taken by Tata Sons. So can we expect independent directors of other Tata companies to also have meetings ahead of scheduled board meetings now?
Well, absolutely. In fact, I can say that at least two companies, Tata Chemicals and Tata Motors, independent directors on both these companies are likely to meet ahead of their board meeting, and they will in these meetings that they'll be holding among themselves, they'll be again reviewing the performance of Cyrus Mistry afresh. Tata Chemicals board meeting, remember, is on the 10th of November, and Tata Motors board meeting is on the 14th of November. What we can also confirm at this stage is that we have reached out to certain independent directors on the board of Tata Steel as well, and they too have expressed concern in the manner in which Cyrus Mistry was ousted. In fact, one very senior board member who's been associated with the Tata group of companies for many years said that all the decisions that were taken of divestment, growth, investments were collective in nature, and it was unfair to target Cyrus Mistry alone for any mistakes that may have been made, and you can only sort of gauge if at all there were mistakes with the benefit of the hindsight. In fact, soon after the Indian Hotels board meeting ended today, Shireen, I also reached out to one of the independent directors who was of course part of this board meeting today, and this person said that the reason why all the directors unanimously voted in favor of Cyrus Mistry was because they found him respectful, they found him to be a good chairman, and they said that he was making and taking the right strategic calls. They also went, and one of them also went on to say that the way in which he has been shoring up the balance sheet, even though Indian Hotels is still a loss-making entity, remember, but their financial performance under Cyrus Mistry has actually improved vis-a-vis what it was, under Mr. Ratan Tata. So one thing that's clearly evident now is the sheer divergence in views between independent directors on the board of Tata Sons. We had Ronan Sen, of course, on our channel yesterday, very categorically sticking by his decision to oust Cyrus Mistry, to vote for the removal of Cyrus Mistry, and the independent directors on the group companies who clearly, at this stage, at least with Indian Hotels and many of the other group companies that we've been speaking with, are not convinced. So how will this be bridged will be something very interesting to watch in the coming days.
Yeah. Okay, guys, hang in there. Let's go across to Jane Gupta, former Executive Director of SEBI and Managing Director at Stakeholders Empowerment Services. Also with us, Mr. H.P. Ranina, corporate lawyer. Mr. Ranina and Mr. Gupta, appreciate you joining us. Mr. Ranina, let me come to you first, sir. This is clearly an embarrassing day for Tata Sons. They may still go ahead with their plans of calling an EGM, but in terms of the perception battle, certainly it has not gone in favor of Tata Sons' decision to oust Cyrus Mistry, with eminent people like Deepak Parekh coming out in support of Cyrus Mistry and independent directors unanimously supporting Cyrus Mistry as chairman of Indian Hotels. Do you believe that this now puts the Tatas in a peculiar situation when it comes to the road ahead?
Of course, it will put them in a very embarrassing position. But then they have to be blamed for what has happened, because they never disclosed on 24th of October the reasons for ousting Mr. Cyrus Mistry. And now to tell the independent directors of Indian Hotels that they should have known what the reasons for it is ridiculous. Because surely if the independent directors of Tata Sons Limited had reasons, they should have spelled them out so that it becomes part of the public knowledge. Tata Sons, maybe it's a private company by itself, but it is the owner of all the publicly listed companies, and it is the duty of directors of Tata Sons to make known the reasons for ousting Mr. Cyrus Mistry. Therefore, the independent directors, I think, have to be congratulated for having taken a view, and not only taking a view, but for stating very clearly that that they have full faith in Mr. Cyrus Mistry's, that he is a man of great competence, that the strategies adopted by him, though different from the earlier strategies, are the strategies in the right direction for the company. And this, I think, is a great thing for Cyrus Mistry because it shows his competence and it shows that he really is a good chairman. And what can be the ground for removing such a good chairman is something which I just fail to understand.
Yeah. So, Mr. Ranina, let me get you to comment on the statement, and that's the only statement that's come in from the Tata side. Legal advisor to the Tatas, Mohan Parasaran, has spoken with us and told us that this is a well-crafted move, and this, he believes, is setting the stage for a long-drawn legal battle. He's also said that the manner in which, how quickly this decision was sort of conveyed to regulatory authorities raises eyebrows. And in that statement, he's also questioned the bona fides of independent directors for the manner in which, today's events have taken place. How would you respond to the comment that's come in there from Mohan Parasaran?
Well, let me put it this way. I think it was a duty of independent directors to convey their decision as soon as possible to the regulatory authorities. They should be commended for it. And I'm shocked that a former Solicitor General of India should take such a stand that they acted in which was not proper. In fact, the independent directors did the right thing. It is their duty to inform the public of the decision which they have taken, which unfortunately the independent directors of Tata Sons did not do. So I think the independent director of Indian Hotels Company Limited did the right thing. And I do not agree with the views expressed by the advocate for the Tata Group. This only shows how, it's unfortunate, but very unfortunate that this type of statement should have come from him. In fact, independent directors of Indian Hotels have done the right thing, stood by the law. They have not only improved the perception of independent directors, but they have acted in a manner which they should have acted in their capacity as independent directors.
Mr. Gupta, let me ask you then, sir, do you believe that the developments of today should actually force the Tatas to regroup and reassess their strategy? Because as our colleagues are reporting, we could see perhaps similar developments emerge at other Tata Group companies like Tata Motors, for instance, as well. And that will push the Tatas further into a corner, at least as far as the perception battle is concerned. Do you believe that this could perhaps lead to some sort of a review of strategy? Though sources at this point in time suggest that is not going to be the case, and they will go ahead and call an EGM. Mr. Gupta?
See, first of all, the sources that you are saying, they are saying that there will be no change in strategy because the sources will never reveal what their strategy would be, first. The second very important point I want to make is this: right from day one, we have been saying that Tata Sons have not come out with the real reason for removal, because non-performance was not a reason for removal on a short notice of a 1 hour or 2 hours. And when they make a statement today that the independent directors should have checked with us, the Tata Sons people, and we have cogent reasons for removal, that means they are saying that we only don't know the reason, but whatever we have told to the public at large is not correct. That is the first point. The second point, when you say that this board bought with the decision of the board today. Now, I would say that probably the board, if they were acting independently, had no other option but to go for this reason. Otherwise, they would have found themselves in a very embarrassing situation. If you recall, 2-3 days back, there was a information in the news report that Mr. Mistry has claimed that in June, the entire board has evaluated, Nomination and Remuneration Committee has evaluated Cyrus Mistry's performance and found that he has been working excellently. Now, suppose the board was to decide today against Mr. Mistry, what logic they would give that in 3 months he has become from a performance to non-performance? Then they would say, we follow the same policy which Tata Sons had adopted. In that case, they would say that, oh, we are not independent, we are blindly following what is Tata philosophy or what is Tata Sons' vision. Now, going back from this, if this company has taken, if this board has taken a decision, now each and every other Tata board will be following this. And if they were to take a decision which is different from the decision that has been taken by the board today, they would be facing an embarrassing situation because they would have to explain why they are still going ahead with the support for Tata Inc., although they are independent directors. Now, if they had not evaluated Mr. Mistry 3 months back as performance, good performance, then probably they could have changed. Now, the issue is today.
Let me, since Mr. Gupta, since you raised that point, sir, since you raised the point of the remuneration and the nominations committee, the head of the committee is Ronan Sen, who's also a board member of Tata Sons, and I'll get both Mr. Gupta and you to comment on that. And Ronan Sen, in his statement to us yesterday, said that to imagine that there were no developments between the 28th of June and the 24th of October. So 28th of June is when the committee gave its report, and the 24th of June is when Cyrus Mistry was moved out of Tata Sons. To imagine that there were no new developments is naive, to put it mildly, is what Mr. Sen seemed to suggest there. And also he said that, you know, the fact that the leaks of the report, of the remuneration report, have been selective is what he had to say, suggesting almost that there was stuff there that we don't know of. Mr. Ranina, you know, is it now time for the Tatas to come clean on the reasons and the rationale behind that decision on the 24th of October? Will they now be forced to come out and say plainly what led to the ouster?
Yes, you're absolutely right. They have to do it, and in fact, there's a great responsibility on the directors of Tata Sons to explain the reasons for taking the view of removing Mr. Cyrus Mistry. So naturally, they will be asked to now explain, or at least the regulatory authorities should write to them and ask them to explain. They have every reason to do that because, as I said earlier, Tata Sons, while it's a closely held company, private company, but it controls the voting rights in all the listed companies, publicly listed companies, and therefore SEBI should ask the Tata Sons directors to explain the reasons for their taking that stand on 24th of October.
Right. Gentlemen, I'm going to request you to